Hi, my name's Kyle Houchins. I'm a technical trainer for McNeil, and this is Getting Started Rhino for Mac. If you're new to the Getting Started format, the way this works is either the night before, the morning of, sit down and do some kind of sketch of some sort, and I then put it away. I don't think about it. I don't model it. I don't practice it, and I reload it in the morning and model it with fresh eyes like you would if somebody walked into your office and dropped this sketch on your desk. So we're going to figure it out along the way, and hopefully it goes smoothly. But if it doesn't and we make some mistakes, I always like to say I make the mistakes so you don't have to. We'll talk about what happened, how to recover from it, and hopefully how to learn not to make that mistake in the future. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this little USB charger, car charger, cigarette lighter adapter thing. It's an interesting little form, and basically it's a cylindrical piece with a rounded bottom, and then it has this kind of rounded square top that flares out. And it's a fairly simple item, and it's a little bit simpler than typically what I normally do if I'm feeling ambitious for one of these getting started videos. But the thing that I found interesting about it was that oftentimes it's simple forms like this that really cause problems with folks trying to, figure out how to get going, especially when you're getting started. So we'll go through this piece by piece. We'll talk about some strategy and how to proceed and go from there. So if you have any questions, hit the chat, let me know. I will stop periodically and answer questions if there are any. If not, we'll just roll. These videos are all posted on YouTube, which is Rhinoceros 3D on YouTube, and you can find that in the Getting Started for Mac section. So with that, let's get going. I started this essentially the same way I start every model, and that is with the picture frame command or picture command. Picture frame if you're old like me. Picture if you picked up in Rhino 7 or forward. The picture command allows you to find an image on your machine. You'll bring it into the scene and you'll just simply drop it in there. And I will show you how to do that if I unlock this one. And we get rid of it and I run picture and I find my sketch and I bring it in and I'm just going to click and drag it into the scene. I'm going to drop it somewhere origin adjacent. And then I need to determine the scale. I was taking a task at my last video because I did the entire thing and I didn't talk about scale at all. This thing is about 2 and 2. It's like 2.375 tall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click at 0. I'm going to type 2.375 and I'm going to go straight up. I'm going to go 0 first. So 0. And then we're going to go 2.375 and I'm going to drag straight up and I'm going to click and then I'm going to drag straight over and I'm going to draw a little hockey stick and I've got my orthos turned on there. So I'm going to shut that off. And what this does is this essentially establishes the scale for the object. And so then I'm going to use gumball. I'm going to stick this right about there and then I'm going to scale from 0, and I'm going to click the top of my sketch, and I'm going to just snap it right to my line, and that should give me, if I go through here and throw a linear dimension on it, I should go through, and I should get 2.37. My resolution on my dimension is 1 digit off, and you can change that in the dimension settings, but 2.375, it's just rounding up to 2.37. So this is the picture dropped into the scene. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually take gumball and I'm going to slide it out of the center of the window. And the reason I do that is if I were to build something, especially in shaded mode, it would occlude the image and you wouldn't be able to see what's going on. So the last thing I'm going to do is change this to the image layer. And then I'm going to go to the materials tab. I'm going to find my image. And I'm going to crank the transparency up a little bit so that it's faded, so that it's a little bit easier to model over and I don't lose my lines. And then back to my layers, and then we're just going to click and lock it. Okay. So if we go to the front view, we take a look at this thing. This is actually a fairly simple object. We've got a cylindrical section, we've got a spherical section, and then we've got this kind of rounded rectangular section that's blended together. So I think the best way to proceed is probably just to start with a cylinder. And I'm going to do that by dropping that right at 0. And I'm going to scale it out till it's about the right size. And I'm going to change my direction constraint to none. And then I'm going to shift drag up to about where that transition would start. And then I'm going to shift command drag the base of this, and I'm going to drag it up to about where the sphere starts. So this is kind of the barrel of the object and where it's going to be. If we look at this in shaded view, you can see that it's just pretty basic cylinder. I'm going to actually shift command click and get rid of the top cylinder, or the top of the cylinder, and leave it open, because we're going to actually draw the piece that it's going to transition to next. And I want to be able to surface that without having to worry about that cap. So the next piece we're going to build is the profile for the top. And we're going to do that with a center rectangle rounded. And I'm going to snap that to the center of this object. And we're going to start here. And we're going to kind of come out to the sides here, and then we're going to round that off. And I'm going to just bring it up here and make sure that I'm pretty close. And it looks like I'm a little thin, so I think I'm going to do that again. So let's do this again, and I'm going to use this from the midsection here, and I'm going to snap that at the center, and I'm going to drag that out, rounded, and we're going to get it a little bit closer to what we wanted. Something like that. There we go. That's a little better. So let's adjust this just a hair, just to double check and see how we did. And I think that's pretty close. I think that's close enough, considering that my drawing is probably not super symmetrical or whatever, but I want to make sure that this is centered on my part. So I'm going to snap that to the center, and then I'm going to go to perspective view, and I'm going to rotate this 90 using gumball. And then I'm going to snap this to the center using snappy dragging on my gumball right there. Now, if your gumball's not responding to snaps, you want to go down here and you want to change this from smooth dragging to snappy dragging. So we're going to just put that right up there. Now, you would assume that we're going to build forward. We're going to build this way, right? And that actually isn't the case. I'm going to set this kind of right about there. And we're actually going to build in the other direction. So I'm going to grab the extrude handle. I'm just going to drag up. And I'm going to knock the bottom of this off. Shift command click and then delete. And so I've got an open surface here and an open surface here. And the reason that I'm going to do that, this is actually a proxy surface. We're not going to end up using it for anything. What we're going to do is we're actually going to use a blend surf to create the piece that we do want to keep, which is going to be in the center here. And we're going to make sure that we select all the pieces, and then we're going to adjust the start and ends of this. And I'm going to snap this right there, and then the other one right there. And we want to make sure that it's going in the right direction. So the arrows are facing the right direction. And then we're going to go ahead and run that. And you'll see that it makes a really beautiful version of what our parts are, right? And we could probably get away with just doing this with tangency and then do a little bit of adjustment. And I'm going to switch this to front view. And we can drag our handles a little bit and zoom in a little bit on our shape, hone in a little bit on our shape. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. Now we can get rid of this top part. We can just delete it. We can join up this whole thing, and we can run the cap command to close it up. So we've got a solid surface now. And if we look at this and we compare it to, in wireframe mode, to our sketch, we're pretty darn close to what we need. We need to add the sphere to the bottom of this. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to just do that with a 2-point sphere, and I'm going to snap it on one side and the other. And then we're just going to do a Boolean to stick those together. Now, Booleans in version 8 are much improved over 7 and 6. They handle coplanar situations much better than they used to. So if you've done something like that in the past and gotten burned, give it another shot. I think you'll be happier with what's going on in 8 versus what was going on in 7 or 6. Yeah. So let's keep going. We've got a curved shape that we need to add to the top of this, and I'm going to add that with a center point curve, and I'm going to snap it kind of right in the middle here, and then I'm going to drag it out both directions, and I like doing this from the center, that way we know it's symmetrical. And then I'm going to change its degree, and I have a hotkey set up for this, so I'm going to use my hotkey, but the command is actually change degree, and we're going to change this to degree 3, and you're going to see that what that does is that gives us 4 points now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick these 2 outside points, and I'm going to just use gumball, and I'm going to just drag those down to where they need to be, and then I'm going to grab these 2 inner points, and I'm going to drag those up to where they need to be, and I'm going to scale them apart just a little bit to make that just a hair softer. And then I'm going to go to perspective view, and we can use one of the new features in 8, which is the cutter on the gumball. We're just going to drag it straight through, and it's going to cut the top of the part right off. And if you look at this in shaded view, you can see that in just a couple of minutes here, less than 10 minutes, we've actually built most of our model. All right, so I'm going to get rid of some curves because we don't need these anymore. And I am going to save this because I haven't done it yet. And then let's keep going. So the next part that I want to build is this little pointy bit down here, which is the contact. And I'm going to steal these parts right here. So I'm going to shift command drag those. I'm going to start dragging the gumball. I'm going to tap the option key, and you see that plus sign shows up. That means I've made a copy, and then I'm going to shift drag to scale this down, and then I'm going to just poke it right up inside there. Like that, and like that. And if we're being picky, we can cap this, and we can do a Boolean subtract. And we don't want to get rid of it, so let's do a Boolean subtract. We're not going to delete the inputs. And then we're going to scale this down just a little bit. And because we didn't delete the input, it left a copy in there, so we need to get rid of that. And I just want to create a tiny little bit of space in there. So let's get this detail in the front. Go to wireframe. And we're going to start again from the center. And I'm going to drag out. And I want this to be rounded. And you might be asking why I didn't start right on the part itself. It's because I didn't have anything to snap to. So I want to make sure that I have what I need in order to snap. So I'm going to turn the curve on, and then I'll just drag these points to scale it to where I need to be. I'm going to split this in half because I'm going to actually revolve this. So I'm going to snap a curve in this direction, and we're just going to trim off half of it. Go to the perspective view, and we'll do the revolve command. Revolve this, and the axle, the bicycle axle that this is going to spin around is in this direction. And so we're going to just go full, and that's going to give us a piece like that. It's sticking out a little bit too far, so I'm going to stick it in a little bit using gumball. And then I'm going to mirror it using the mirror X hotkey I have, but you can just use the mirror command. And I'm going to do a Boolean again. I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to select these two. And if I hide this, you can see that copy still in there. I'm going to delete that. You can see the the Boolean has been done. And then I'm going to just scale this down, shift click on this, and I'm going to just do 0.99, just the tiniest little bit so that there's a little bit of a reveal in between this thing, in between this little contact in the body. Same thing, 0.99. Just scale it down just the tiniest little bit. Okay. So the top part's up here. I'm going to use a new command in Rhino 8, and it's called inset. And what we're going to do is, actually, nope, I'm going too fast. Let's add this little radius on the side first. So let's go and add this first. And that lives in here. And we're going to just do an edge fillet. And we're going to do something small. I'm going to just drag the handle until it gets something kind of close to what I want, 0.067. That's kind of a weird number. So I'm actually going to set this using the set all. And I'm going to set this to 0.06, just so it's a round number. Using an odd number like that, if you end up actually going to production, your machinist is going to hate you if you use a weird number like that. So now I want to make a little cut in here. I want to make a little cut line between the fillet and the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the inset command, and I'm going to inset on this face through, and I'm going to use the through point, and I'm going to drag just a little cut like that. And then I'm going to use push pull, and I'm going to select that, and I'm going to just drop it just a tiny little bit, just to get my cut in there. And that gives me that cut. So let's do a couple of more little parts in here. We've got a little LED, and then we've got our two USB parts, and we're getting pretty close to being done here. So let's go to the top view, and we're going to use a rounded rectangle again. And I'm going to snap this to the center. And I want to use a center rectangle, sorry. Center rectangle. And my quad's not lighting up, so I'm going to turn that on because I want to be able to start with a quad, because that's kind of where that needs to be. And we're going to do this rounded. Like that. Stick this in here somewhere like that. And I'm going to project this onto the face. And the reason I'm going to do that is because that's going to give me the opportunity to use push-pull. And then what I'm going to do the same thing I did before, which is I'm going to do this in wireframe. I'm going to grab my original curve, this one, and I'm going to offset that just a little bit. And offset, lose. Offset. And we're going to do just a little one. 0.01, maybe 0.05. Something like that. Maybe even something smaller like 0.02. Just the tiniest little one. And then I'm going to project that onto the surface as well. And that is going to give me, project it onto this surface. Let's go back and get my original curves. So I'm going to project both of them at the same time. There we go. So now I've got those projected onto the surface. If we go back into shaded mode, you can see that those are both projected. We're going to push pull. And I'm going to get this little region. And it looks like it's having a hard time selecting that region. And so I think what I need to do is I think I need to get rid of this curve. And let's push pull this in. And then let's inset on here. And we're going to go through point. And we're going to just drag out like that. And then we'll push pull again. And we'll just pull this back up. Like that. And that gives us our little cut line there. The reason that it was having a hard time picking this is that that number is so close to actually the file tolerance. The file tolerance on this is 0.001. And the 0.002 offset was close enough that push-pull was having a hard time identifying that region. So that's why that was misbehaving. So always a different way to get there if needed. So the last thing that we need to do is add our 2 USB ports in here. And I grabbed some parts from GrabCAD, which these are free and they're delightfully nice to use. I'm not entirely sure whether they're, perfectly accurate, but for our purposes for this, it's probably just fine. So I'm going to grab these and I'm going to rotate this 90. And I want this to go actually the other direction. And let's snap these to the center of the object right there. And then let's bring them in and up. And I'm going to just poke them out the top there so I can see if they're located correctly, and they're not because they're cutting into that LED. So let's grab these and slide them this way a little bit. And that is about right, but we don't want them poking out the top. So I'm going to just stick it right inside there. And this one, I'm going to finish getting it all the way in like that. Now, we can use these guys to make our openings. And the way that we're going to do that, I'm going to hide this part for the time being, is we're going to duplicate these curves. So I'm going to shift double click this curve. Just want the edge. I wonder if I got a filter on. There we go. It's not letting me have that. So we're going to up here and we'll dupe an edge. And I'm going to double click and I'm going to get that whole edge. I'm going to double click and get that whole edge. And this gives us some curves that we can mess with. And I'm going to take these curves and I'm going to scale them both up. I'm going to join it. 1.1. Actually, that's probably too much. Let's go. 1.1 is probably fine. Let's just go with that. Yeah, that'll work. And then we'll do the same thing here. Join all those. 1.1. Gonna go up just a little bit. Let's just compare it and see. I want to make sure that I'm not going crazy with these. Yeah, that's quite a bit bigger than I wanted. So let's undo those scaling. And let's scale it up. Let's eyeball scale it a little bit. So I'm going to just scale this out a hair like that and a hair like that. That's more what I was looking for. So let's grab this one. Same thing. Top, I'm going to scale it just a hair this way and just a hair this way. That should be plenty. Now, these curves look like, let's make sure and see if they're going to join. They should. They do. Okay, so those are both joined. So let's grab these, and I'm going to bring them up just a hair. And let's bring our part back. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a new feature in Rhino 8, which is this cutter. And what I need to do is determine how much cutting I need. And I'm going to scale these to 0 so they're on the same plane. And so I'm going to go to wireframe, and I'm going to take a look at this. And the USB-C needs to cut to here, and the USB-A needs to cut to here. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab the cutter, which is this little thing here, and I'm going to come down here and snap to that part. Now, notice it cut away this piece. So I need to actually hide this and this because the cutter cuts through everything that it can see. So let's do that again. I'm going to come down here, snap to there. You can see that it made that hole. Same thing here, snap to there, and it cut that hole. So those should be our sockets. And if we take a look at that, you can see that that cut through and it capped it nicely. So that makes a nice wire cut. And then we'll show our parts, and they tuck in there pretty nicely. So we're actually in pretty good shape with this model. If we look at this in rendered view, you can see that we have all sorts of things in here that we can take a look at, and we can start assigning some materials in here. So I took the liberty of making some materials to start with. So let's start with a plastic material, and I'm just going to click and drag that on here. And you can see that this plastic material has a tiny little bit of texture to it. So it just gives it just a little bit of shine. And then these parts, I've got a metal in here. Let's assign that metal. Let's do this metal. And then we've got some sub-objects in here. Let's ungroup those. And the insides of this are black. So I'm going to assign those this black. And that gives us a little bit of detail in here. And show everything again. We've got an LED here. So I'm going to grab this face, Shift Command click, and I'm going to come in here and grab the side face. And I'm going to assign that this emissive material.
See.
And then there's a little color break around the outside of this thing. So I'm going to Shift Command click that and assign this red. And then the face of this is not textured. It's actually kind of a piano black. So I'm going to assign that so we've got a nice shiny face on it. So we got a few more metal parts down here. And we can assign that up. And then the last thing that we need to do is throw a decal on here. So I'm going to click. Going to go to Properties. We're going to add a decal. We're going to apply it planar. And we're going to do it from the center. I'm going to start here. I'm going to click the mapping widget right here. Click on the decal itself. And I'm going to rotate it -90 because it's going against the arrows. And we're going to drop it right in here with Gumball. And we'll go to perspective view. We can hide our decal widget again. And we can see that we have a part now. So let's save this. Pre-flight checks I normally do. I use the sell bad command. And down here you'll see it says no bad objects selected, which means everything in the scene is valid. The next thing I'll do is sell open polysurf. And you can see that the only thing that lights up are the GrabCAD parts that I brought in. Everything else is valid. We would probably want to take a peek at those and see if that's something that needs to be fixed. And the way that we would do that is just show those parts. We would come in here to the edge tools, which lives down here. And we would turn on show edges, and you can see that there are a few naked edges in these parts, and we would probably want to fix those if we were going to do some rapid prototyping of some sort. In this particular case, I'm probably not going to spend the time to fix that. If you want to learn how to fix parts, there's actually a video called File Repair for Watertight Parts on Rhinoceros 3D. Take a peek at that one. Everything else in the model is valid. My parts are valid. The parts that I imported have some problems, but the parts that I built are all fine. And so we would be pretty good shape to go ahead and export this, to whatever program that we wanted to send it to, or do some prints or whatever, assuming that we had fixed these pieces here. One nice thing that we could do is shrink wrap this entire thing and get a one solid mesh that we could export. Shrink wrap is a powerful new feature in Rhino 8, which helps you kind of unify parts that might not necessarily be entirely unifiable to start with. And there's tons of videos on YouTube about how to do that as well. So I think for this, what I'm going to do is call this good. And then one last thing I wanted to do was just do a quick rendering of this. And what I would probably do is pose this part. And so let's get rid of the curves that are in the scene. Let's get rid of our image. I've got that on a layer so I can just hide it. And let's rotate this guy 90. Like that. Let's go the other direction. Let's go 180. I want the logo to be upright. There we go. That's better. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need to get it settled so that it looks like it's not floating weirdly in space. So let's take this and drop it down and just line it up with a grid line. And then we're going to use let me double check one thing here. I want to make sure that this is facing in the right direction. And it is. All right. So we're going to go in the front view. And then what we'll do is pick the entire part. And we're going to use the rotate command, and we're going to snap at the lowest part that we can find, which is down here, maybe somewhere right in there. And then we're going to go up to here, and then hold the shift key, and we'll stick it down like that. We'll go into perspective view, and we'll pose our shot, something kind of like that. And maybe what I'm going to do, because I can't see this charging tip, and that's actually kind of an important part of the model, I might cheat this image just a hair. Let's see what it looks like. If I change the lens from 50 to 35, it's going to give us a little bit more perspective. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat this thing a little bit, just so you can see it. It would be sticking out too much, but because of the angle of the shot, that actually allows us to be able to see that thing, which is part of the storytelling of the image. And so I think I'm gonna use that as a cheat, and I'm gonna let that just stick out just a little bit farther than it normally would. And then the last thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna start a ray trace, and we're going to let that run. And one of the things that I applied in here, if you click in the star with the post effects, I've actually added a glow effect down here, and I've picked the color orange and allowed that to have a little bit of glow. And if I change the radius of that, you can see I can adjust that to be bigger or smaller, depending on what my desired effect is. Maybe we'll just do a little glow on that. And then the intensity, we can play with that a little bit, or we can really crank it up and let it really go. Maybe too much. Let's go something in between. There we go. And then we'll just let that go ahead and res up and finish up. And that is our finished part. So quickie, 33 minutes start to finish. And this is something that with a little bit of shrink wrapping, you could throw through a printer and prototype. You could see how it feels in your hands, see what the scale is and all that kind of stuff. So little over a half hour's worth of work. You've got a presentation rendering and a part that you could prototype and take a peek at. And I think that's probably a good day's work. Don't tell your boss how fast it is. Any questions on any of that? If not, I will let you go. Alrighty, looks like no questions. Thank you for joining. My name's Kyle Houchins. I'm a tech and a trainer for McNeil. This was Getting Started Rhino for Mac. Go make great stuff. Thanks. Bye.